Today is it's not exactly a big Buddhist holiday, but it's pretty close. A couple days ago, it was Vesak. So I'm compelled to want to celebrate and honor this tradition, Vesak, which is in the Theravadan tradition. Um, it is the day we celebrate the birth of the Buddha, the historical figure Siddhartha Gautama, um, 2,600 years ago or so in the Indian subcontinent, North India. Siddhartha Gautama was born. He also, on this day, reached enlightenment, and also this day died. So it celebrates all three. Um, so yeah, so quite the celebration. So we can look at the whole Buddha's life and be inspired by it, and you know, at least especially in this tradition, it's like the Buddha is an example of what's possible for all of us to awaken completely in this life. And and so what I want to do is tell a couple of stories from the Buddha's life around his awakening, and hopefully you can see yourself in these stories, and be inspired. So it all started back in the day. The Buddha was like kind of like a prince, a real rich kid, and he um, when he was born, they had like a psychic of some sorts, and consulting with his dad, the king, um, and they said that this child is either going to become a badass warrior, is going to be a warrior king, and do what you do, Mister King, but way better, or you know, so much karmic momentum in this young one that it could go one of two ways. It could go that way, or it could go he could become like a spiritual guy. And the king was like, spiritual guy, like, no way, dude. Like, obviously, we're gonna try to make him the king and badass, and so try to save his life, and like as you do, as parents tend to do, they try to like put their ideals on their kid, and they try to shape the conditions of the life to become what they hope for, and as often happens, that didn't really work out the way the parents expected. So parents tried to protect him from seeing anything that might spur a spiritual insight or questioning, and so just gave him like a pretty awesome life, parties and beautiful people and delicious food, and um, yeah, just lots and lots of good stuff of life. And and then at some point in his young adulthood, he found his way out, as young adults tend to do, and they find their way out of their parents' grip, and they get inspired and they launch on their own path, and so he did. And I was like, yo, the spiritual path, I'm gonna go hard. Like, he was a serious guy. We could talk that momentum. That psychic was not bullshit. He went hard. And he went as hard as he possibly could. He studied with the meditative masters of the day, and uh, excelled. And he found that, you know what, the life of it was clear from the beginning, I guess, of a spiritual path, that like this hedonistic lifestyle of just trying to get all the good stuff and live a good life doesn't really lead to the liberation that I think is possible, and like the real happiness. There's something more, so that sent him on the spiritual quest to find that real something more thing. And And the way he did it, he went as far as possibly could from any teachers that he found this doesn't really seem to end in a really inspiring way. I think there's more. And so he was determined and sat down, meditated one day, and said, I'm going to sit and I'm not really going to move from this place until I become enlightened. I'm going to find whatever that next real freedom is. And the practices he was doing were the extreme, like the opposite from the rich kid hedonistic lifestyle. He went hard of like starving himself, because if you just take away all the pleasures of life, then you can see clearly. And if you concentrate, you can concentrate. The more you concentrate, the more intense life is, the more you burn away your bad karma through all these aesthetic practices. That was supposed to lead to liberation. So he went really hard, and he's like skinny and barely eating and just doing what you're supposed to do on this spiritual path that he found. Um, and so, yeah, with the strong determination, he takes a seat, and you got to imagine this skinny spiritual dude on the verge of death. And, and then he has like a spontaneous memory of, he's like, you know what? There was this one party my dad threw. And I remember I was like a young guy, and I just walked away from the party a little bit, sat down underneath this rose apple tree, something like that. And I just sat down, enjoyed the sitting posture, and just kind of looked out and saw the beauty around and felt delighted and found some ease and some spaciousness. And of course, concentration arises out of this sort of state of ease and well being. And just had like the most beautiful meditative experience with like low effort and it's of like wholesome pleasure of just presence, not the kind of pleasure of like chasing all the sexy people that were at the party, and not the pleasure of all the fancy drinks and foods, but a simple like stillness and ease. And so he's remembering this, and he's like, man, whatever path I'm headed on, like I don't see why that's not part of the path. That is a wholesome, delightful meditative state. Like that is that would be onward leading on a good path. Like why don't I integrate that into this whole seeking? And so that kind of helped him realize the middle way, in between this severe, intense, reject all pleasures, and the other extreme of seek out all the pleasures and get all the good stuff. Somewhere in the middle, that that could be part of the path, joy, pleasure, wholesome ease. So hopefully that's what you hear in some of our teachings and guided meditations, as we're trying to guide that way, this kind of middle path that includes, it doesn't have to be so intense. It includes simplicity and the beauty and the power of that. Just just a person walking away from a party to go chill for a minute, feeling pretty delighted. And so the story goes on. He does use that insight to find a whole big old map of clarity for himself, that he understood total liberation and found the uh, the profound awakening that is the core of the Buddha's teachings. And so he found that, and then he's like, all right, well, shit, nobody else is gonna get this. Like, this is way too nuanced and subtle. Like all the stuff I'm seeing, like, and then this being from another realm comes in, and he was used to talking to these beings from other realms. Other realm comes in and says, "Hey, I'm pretty sure there's people that would get this. Like, why don't you kind of use their brilliance and like think about it for a second?" And Buddha's like, "Okay." Let me think about it. Yeah, now that I think about it, I can see people who are ready for this. I guess I should try to share this. So he's like, man, there's these five guys, my homies I've been hanging out with, some friends that have been meditating hard together, and they're pretty much really good at this stuff. They're just kind of missing a couple pieces. So let me go find those guys. And anyways, long story short, there's some cool details in there, but he basically brings them over. He finds them in this park, deer park, I guess, and he says, "Hey, let me break it down. I got four simple things. Call them some the noble truths." He teaches them this breakdown of the insights he's had, and one of them at least gets it. And he had gone from the solo insight, figured it out, to oh shit, I can teach this. Like people can get this. And man, I wish I should have pulled up that video. There's a video of somebody dancing all weird at a music festival. And they're just like just getting weird, and everybody else is just sitting watching the music festival. And they look like a weirdo, and they're just flailing and all this stuff. And then like one other person gets up and goes and joins them, and now there's two flailing weirdos. But then at that point, it's not just one weirdo; it's like that's a thing. And then like somebody else jumps up and goes, and then pretty soon it's everybody's flailing weirdos, and it's just this big old ripple of like joy and freedom. And one takeaway from that video is that that's a critical turning point when it goes from one person to two. That's what launched things. There's always could be one weirdo, but you add somebody else, and it kind of becomes something bigger and collective. And so, anyways, that point in the story, when he teaches it and it lands, is when that's when they call the Dharma wheel was set in motion. The Dharma wheel was set in motion. And that's another cool story. I don't think I have time for that, but like that was like a old myth. He was building on these old myths of the day of like these wheels that turn and spread through kingdoms and blah blah blah. But he turned it into more of a spiritual thing of like this is the Dharma wheel is now set in motion. This is not about conquering lands. This is about kind of for better or worse spreading the good word. And my friend and teacher Sean White Oak he just gave the Dharma Talk this week for Vesak at Spirit Rock, and I went to his house today and talked to him, and he was saying that one of the things he urged people was that in the Insight Buddhist community, this kind of convert Buddhist, for a long time, it was appropriate for like the teachers like Jack Kornfield to be like, don't be a Buddhist, just be a Buddha, like you don't try to become a Buddhist, you know. And he was kind of nudging people that like at this point, it's probably okay to become a Buddhist. Like this is a deep spiritual tradition. It has to like try to pick and choose and like be the Buddha, but not really Buddhist can sometimes be a trap in itself where you're just trying to like pick and choose from a tradition and not kind of devote yourself to the beauty of it. And so, yeah, he's somebody who always reminds me of just like the vastness and the beauty and like to be, yeah, to be kind of to yeah to give your all to this kind of these teachings is actually a pretty beautiful thing and can be very useful. And of course, you expect to make your own decisions, but there's just uh, the image that comes in this moment in the story, though, is one that is kind of inspiring for me, where the story goes that once the Dharma wheel was set in motion, that like you zoom out on the history of humanity or whatever, like that was a huge change. If you think the Buddhist insights are important and valuable, like that was a ripple effect through the universe of whatever. And that's how it's described, as like the earth shook and the devas rejoiced, and it like went from one level of beings all out in the whole universe were just like, oh shit, he figured it out. Somebody figured it out and it can spread. And it's like, like a big old blast of wholesome joy, mudita reflecting and fractaling and expanding and just explosion of mudita blast through the universe. And so yeah, to the extent that like um I read this other teaching from this Thai forest teacher the other day where he was talking about the quality of respect. We don't talk much about in this tradition, but that um, it's like a valuable um, quality that we can get curious about. Like, what does it feel like? Like, when you think, just for a moment, I'll invite you to think of like who is someone who evokes respect, someone that you actually feel respect for. And like, if you can kind of feel into that and get to know it, like that's a powerful thing. And as we can, the more I can cultivate respect, like damn, the Buddhist, that was some badass teachings. Like this figured out a lot, like laid it out in a really beautiful way. Like just the whole map of the Dharma is just worthy of respect. And so the more I'm like feeling that authentic quality of respect for the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, um, I feel more and more like a Buddhist, and it feels like just authentic, appropriate response. I feel this feel of respect, and so I got a couple more minutes. So yeah, I just want to play with that image more. Like I want to, I've been inspired to create different art pieces and image visual art that like of these things, and I really want to figure out how to draw that Modita blast, because I don't really know how to picture devas and gods and like levels of heavenly realms rippling, but somehow I can almost see it in my mind's eye. But um, and so this is all possible for all of us. This kind of theory. So we can awaken, we can remember a simple thing from our childhood. Maybe that's another prompt to offer you is like, what's just like, it doesn't have to be childhood, just like, what's a wholesome pleasure? You just kick back and it doesn't feel like it's a heavy meditation. It didn't have to be on a retreat, but just like, think of like a simple, wholesome delight, jumping in the pool on a summer's day at your grandma's house, or, you know, these simple, wholesome pleasures that are not addictive, not too intense. It can that be a part of our path and an inspiring part to integrate it and center it even. And then our insights, our clear seeing, and our sharing. Um, yeah, I mean, we can even share the Dharma or just, yeah, even just being kind and compassionate and present, like might ripple out. Maybe not humble the earth, but it does ripple out. And so may your merit, joy ripple out to all beings in all realms, and maybe integrate sweet little childhood memories or wholesome delights. And yeah, may we all be kind of inspired by the Buddha story of the gifts to the world through our own respect and integrity and practice and love. Thank you for listening. Um,
Sup right there.